Good morning, afternoon, evening. Pick one as appropriate. This video has an interesting backstory. This is my car. I was planning a trip that we, along with my wife, were going to take and was trying to think of an easy way of doing it. There are likely hundreds of videos more or less explaining how to use route planning apps. But the apps, and therefore the videos, are all focused on getting you from charger to charger. And unless your name is Kyle Connor, that's not what a road trip is all about. In the real world, people go to historical sites, to amusement parks, to national parks, even tacky old roadside attractions. Since the trip I was contemplating was around 180 miles, just the first leg of a longer journey, but we'll deal with that later. Charging didn't enter into it. I knew where I was going, and I knew how I wanted to get there. But there are maybe 7 or 8 places along that route I'd like to visit. So the question arose, how to use a route planner without chargers? How to get those points of interest onto the infotainment screen? Well, on the surface, it seems like Google Maps can do this. But I wanted to follow a specific route. And there's no simple way of convincing Google of that. It just wants to send you the quickest way. Sure, you can let it generate a route and start to follow it, but turn when you want to and let it recalculate. Then do it again 10 miles later. Then again. And again. This is not helpful. And it doesn't always work. Then it occurred to me, I could enter those waypoints manually. That's not very efficient. Plus, my route would require about 18 of those points, and Google only allows 10. And I needed to take short sections of freeways at various places. Google lets you follow or not follow freeways, but only for the entire route. So, the only way I could think of to do what I want is to break that 180-mile trip into 4 smaller ones, and the 90-mile second leg into 2, and the 190-mile third leg into another 4. Tedious at best. But I resigned myself to all that nonsense. We packed our bags and headed out. Now, unfortunately, there were a number of what we can call production issues along the way. I'll touch on those as they occur. The first and third legs of this journey were inspired by the YouTube channel Restless Viking, a gentleman and his lady from the Grand Rapids area who do a lot of Michigan road trips based on the road's histories. I took 2 of their trips, one following US Route 12 across most of the southern edge of Michigan, and one following the Ghost Route, US 16, now Grand River Avenue, further north, but in reverse. I added the middle leg joining the 2 along Lake Michigan. Now, these both start in downtown Detroit, but we're not going that far east. I've included links to both of those videos in the description if you want to get the whole story. So sit back and enjoy. I've got to get back to editing this beast. Speaking of which, there is a lot of boring footage of just driving. I'm cutting most of it out and speeding up much of what's left. Oh, yeah, like, comment, subscribe, you know the routine. And we're off! Heading out along Route 12, known in this neighborhood as Michigan Avenue. The name changes from time to time as we journey west. Our first stop will be a touristy area known as the Irish Hills, named as such because of a large number of Irish refugees from the potato famine of the late 1840s locating in the area. But before that, we pass by the Barn, a major construction project much in the news and the courts lately. This is Oracle OpenAI's 1.6 million square foot data center. Finally, the Irish Hills area itself, including some of those tacky old roadside attractions I mentioned earlier. My wife, I'll call her Lori from now on, since that's her name, and it's more personal, decided on the spur of the moment that she'd like to see this mystery spot, or hill, or whatever. A quick U-turn, or equivalent, was executed and the exploration began. A closed sign soon changed our minds. But what the heck, this looks like a pretty little country lane. Let's explore that instead. Oh, what do you know? A nice resort kind of area on the shore of a small lake. Except, I thought to myself on the way back to Route 12, the mosquitoes down here must be brutal. The first of the intended stops, the Irish Hills Towers. There is, of course, a story behind them. You can find it on Wikipedia and on Restless Viking's video, both linked in the description. Unfortunately, there's no way to embed active links in the video. No more than a mile down the road is the second intentional stop, the St. Joseph Church and Shrine, and the AOH Irish Famine Memorial. Now, don't get confused. Although the memorial is on church property, it's not part of the shrine. The AOH is the Ancient Order of Hibernians, a 200-year-old American Irish Catholic fraternal organization. They have erected dozens of similar memorials across the country. St. Joseph's Church is on the National Register of Historic Places and is noted for its Way of the Cross trail along the shore of Iron Lake behind the church. Again, relevant links are below. Now here's where those production issues start. Video cameras don't record one long video like they did back in the days of VHS. Modern cameras record anywhere up to about 15 minutes per file. As it happens, the file for the next bit of the trip was corrupted, unusable. Luckily, it didn't cover much other than the Cambridge Junction Historic State Park, which was closed. There were 4, if I remember correctly, places we tried to stop at that were closed. It wasn't a holiday or anything. Maybe tourist attractions in Michigan are just closed on Mondays? Well, here's a picture of the Walker Tavern, which is the main attraction at the park. Restless Viking has a major feature on it in his Route 12 video below. The second part of the file covered McCourty Park, including its infamous Rathskeller and the wood-look concrete structures on site, made by the same craftsman who did the St. Joseph Way of the Cross. The camera started working properly again when we were leaving. If you're interested in traveling through southern Michigan, but don't feel like you have the time, just make a screenshot of this scene and look at it for the next 3 hours. It's all the same. Except the towns, of course, but more on them later. Speaking of towns, we are coming up on Jonesville. Try as I might, I can only find 2 things notable, or at least interesting, about the place. One, it has far more restaurants than you would expect in a town of only 2,100 people. And Powers Clothing is the country's oldest Carhartt retailer. The road from Jonesville to Coldwater is a little more built up, and we do have the village of Allen, blink and you'll miss it, and the town of Quincy. Now, the angled railroad crossing will tell you you're on the right track on the way. If you're heading for Fort Wayne or Indianapolis, here's your chance. Coldwater gives us our next destination, just in time for lunch, Short's Root Beer Stand. A real throwback to the 50s and 60s, complete with car hops. No roller skates, though. They even play Sirius XM's 50s on 5 channel on the under canopy loudspeakers. Cheeseburger, fries, and of course a root beer float, and I'm fueled up for another 100 miles of driving. West of Coldwater are 2 more spots we just drove past since there really wasn't anything to do, but are interesting anyway. First is the grave of Old Sam, a Civil War veteran. Well, he was a horse. One of 200 drafted from the Coldwater area for the Loomis 1st Artillery Battery, and the only one who returned. Again, I say, look him up. The story of his burial is quite interesting. The other point is the Capri Drive-In Theater, one of about 330 still in operation in the U.S., 11 of which are in Michigan. Next on the list is White Pigeon, about 45 miles away. Remember I said we'd talk about the towns? This is as good a time as any, since I forgot to mention 2 of them we passed through to get here to White Pigeon. One is Bronson and one is Sturgis. Much like the landscape, the towns are very much the same. Can you tell which is which? Now we got hit with a double whammy, or triple if you count stupidity. First, another file was corrupted. I suspect this had something to do with the camera not working right, which I still can't figure out. The battery appeared to be dead, or nearly so, despite being plugged into the car. Now, normally this would charge the battery, but the camera just wouldn't stay on. Possibly it had to do with heat. The battery wasn't quite hot, but it was very, very warm. Abnormally so. The cabin was not overly warm. We had the fan on, but didn't need the AC. And normally, charging is what causes batteries to heat up. So, of course, I turned it off and set it out of the direct sunlight to see if it would cool off enough to work. Then whammy number 3, the stupidity. I forgot to check on it again until we unloaded the car at the hotel. The result is that the last 50 or so miles of the day's drive have no video footage. Fortunately, almost all of that distance was just driving. I have some still images of the sights along the way, and I'll share them in a few minutes. Now, leaving White Pigeon, we pass a state police post. Our friend the Viking does a nice piece about the history of that organization, if that interests you. Now, 24 miles of beautiful, yet no longer interesting, scenery to Edwardsburg, where it is most definitely June in Michigan. As we approach Niles, US 12 becomes a big boy road called the Pulaski Highway and continues its trek towards Lake Michigan. Niles has 2 related historical sites: the grave and memorial of Father Claude Jean Allouez, the successor to the more famous Père Marquette, and Fort St. Joseph, which Father Allouez founded as a mission, which was converted to a trading post after his death. We were in no condition to attempt the climb to the Allouez Memorial, and the fort isn't much more than a large boulder. Western Michigan University hosts a 2-day archaeological field school on site every summer. Now, practically next door to Niles is Buchanan, where we find another 2 points of interest. One only interested me, but hey, I'm going somewhere tomorrow mainly to please Lori, so she can sit still for 5 minutes to humor me. Anyone who had any experience with any part of the sound industry after about 1940 should be familiar with the name Electro Voice. From 1946 through 2000, their main office and plant was here in Buchanan. The building is now near derelict, but can't be demolished because it's an EPA Superfund cleanup site. Piers Mill, spelled pears, pronounced Piers, was constructed in 1857 through 58. And is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. For a few hours on Saturday, you can see the water wheel turning. Needless to say, we were not there on Saturday. The rest of the week, you can still sort of see how the water system works. The interesting part is the mill race, the artificial channel cut to bring water to the mill, runs under the city for much of its length. The next 19 miles is US Route 31, one of the, quote, short sections of freeways at various places, unquote, I referred to earlier. You're not missing much. And finally, Benton Harbor. Well, just outside the city, in the midst of 12 miles of impassable I-94 construction. So we feed the car at Meijer across the way and then feed us at our first ever Chick-fil-A. You know, with them and Popeyes around, how does KFC stay in business? And a comfy bed. Oh yeah, the camera battery seems to have cooled down enough to charge. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Night-night! A bright, sunshiny morning, well rested and ready to go. And as icing on the cake, today is our 25th wedding anniversary. But first, our complimentary breakfast. Don't let anyone try to fool you. You're paying an extra $15 a night for that free breakfast. And a props to Willie Nelson, we're on the road again. This is actually quite a long stretch of I-196 because there's nothing to see along the parallel Blue Star Highway, just solid woods on both sides. I would have preferred that route if you could get a look at the lake. Now, we needed to stop at the store, so it took about 10 miles to work up the courage to try the camera. Glorioski, it works. Now we can overdose on asphalt and trees. This is a good time to explain a rerouting of our itinerary. The original idea was basically just to get out of the house for a few days and do something out of the ordinary for our anniversary. Now, we are not travelers, so 3 days in the car is definitely out of the ordinary. Now, it gave me a chance to follow the two Restless Viking routes, Route 12 and the Ghost Route 16. We intended to take I-196 and US 31 from Benton Harbor to Muskegon, get on 16 at its beginning, or end, depending on your point of view, and follow it back to the Detroit area, stopping at Grand Rapids for the night. Grand Rapids is the home of the Meijer Gardens and Sculpture Park. Now, if you're an artsy nature lover, this place is heaven. A city-bred techie isn't quite so keen on it, but Lori wants to go, so I smile and we go. That's how you last 25 years. But then the National Weather Service stepped in. We planned on hitting the gardens tomorrow morning before heading home. It didn't look like Mother Nature would cooperate, so we rearranged things so we could go there this afternoon. We are now on I-196, heading towards Grand Rapids. You can't live in Michigan for long without hearing about the Twin Cities of Douglas, Saugatuck on the Lake Michigan shore. The area is packed full of trendy restaurants, marinas, trendy restaurants, expensive quasi-resort hotels, jet ski and paddle wheel boat rides, art galleries, million-dollar yachts, and trendy restaurants. Not a fast food drive-through within miles. Maybe I'm exposing myself as a bit of a lowlife, but this is not the kind of place I would choose as a vacation destination. But we're driving by, so I thought we should at least check it out. Another uneventful 33 miles and we reach Granville, the southwesternmost suburb of Grand Rapids, with a welcome fit for a king. Yes, you are seeing exactly what you think you are seeing. A castle. The Grand Castle Apartments, with amazingly reasonable rents. We're now on 28th Street, which, depending on your source, may have been US 16 back in the day, or it may have been Bypass or Business 16, while the mainline US 16 ran down Leonard Street, further north. Now, I'm not going to argue. The history is murky enough as it is. But this bit of info is from the MichiganHighways.org website, with cites numerous MDOT reports over the years, and is probably the more reliable. I admire the Restless Viking's efforts, but in this instance, his spoken words don't match the route on the map he showed, which is the same as this web information. But one thing he does show is that little electrical equipment building at the site of the old Studio 28 multiplex. Sadly, it's been demolished in the last year. It's still there on Google Maps. Arg! Just when I was starting to feel better about this thing, the camera stopped recording again. At least it didn't corrupt any more files. And again, I don't know if I paused it and forgot to turn it back on, or it decided all on its own to frustrate me. There's no question of heat this time. There was no heat. Just no recording. We're back to still shots for the rest of the day, but there are only 2 places to go, so that won't be too bad. Let's just grit our teeth and forge ahead. First is, the first Meijer Thrifty Acres. Now, this is not the actual building, but it is the actual site where Fred Meijer came up with the superstore concept of combining a grocery store with a discount department store. By an amazing coincidence, at exactly the same time, 760 miles away in Rogers, Arkansas, Sam Walton was doing exactly the same thing. And then, one of the main reasons for the trip, the Frederick Meijer Gardens and Sculpture Park. If you want to know how big that horse statue is, I'm 6 foot. A special exhibit that Lori wanted to see, a glass blower named Chihuly. Here's some small indoor stuff and some floating stuff. All glass. Not really my cup of tea, but impressive. Then dinner and another good night's rest. 2 days down, 1 to go. Catch you in the morning. Day 3. We start the day with another complimentary breakfast. Then off to Meijer's to feed the car. I can feel it in my bones. This is going to be a strange day. Or it could just be the humidity acting on my arthritis. If you remember, we changed our plans. So this morning, we are just going to deadhead to Muskegon up I-96 without bothering with cameras and whatnot, since there's nothing to see and it's not part of the Ghost 16 route anyway. We turn off 96 onto Airline Highway, which is part of the Ghost route, at the scene of a construction project on the scale of building the Panama Canal. Now, whether the ghosts possessed me or the confusion was so great, I once again forgot to turn the camera on. So another 80-some miles of no video. Everything from here to almost Lansing. I'll try to piece bits and pieces together coherently. From the interchange of I-96 and Airline Highway, we proceed southeast to Fruitport. The Viking, as usual, has an interesting story about the place. There's a complex system of waterways here which confused me. Many of the little bays and inlets are shown on the map as bayous. How can that be? This isn't Louisiana. Well, yes, bayou is a French word describing shallow, swampy waters around a river delta, most often used in Louisiana and Mississippi. But remember, Michigan was originally explored and settled by the French. So it kind of makes sense. On to Coopersville, home of Charles Westover, better known by his stage name of Del Shannon. His Runaway was a monster hit in 1961. Along with a large exhibit of Shannon's life, the Coopersville Historical Museum also houses a restored interurban car from the early 1900s. And close to home, Old Maud ran between Saline and Ypsilanti, Michigan, during the same period. The town of Marne was originally named Berlin by the German immigrants who settled it. When World War I came along, it was decided that name was no longer appropriate. So it was changed to Marne to honor the almost 400,000 Allied casualties of the two battles fought along that river. Back to Grand Rapids to top off the battery for the journey home. If you turn around, you'll also find a Rivian charging station. That has a pull-through stall in case you're pulling a trailer. And now for the mad dash home. About 150 miles, which should take about 2.5 hours. With 2 quick stops and a number of drive-bys. But with the way this trip has been going, home is most assuredly the operative word here. I don't know how long I'll actually be playing the video. We'll have to see how much stamina I have left. Near Morrison Lake Road, the road to Saranac, the location of the first roadside table. In Portland, a statue of Verlin Kruger, a gentleman who was very active in promoting kayaking events. We wanted to take a quick loop around the state capitol building, but no surprise, road construction in the area made that a bit impractical. And the rain didn't help. Driving through the campus of Michigan State University, where there's a detour around the construction. Finally made it out of the capital area. A few small cities yet to go through. I'm not sure where Howell ends and Brighton begins, but that no longer matters. Just get me out of here. still have about 35 miles to go, and there's more road construction ahead. That'll do it. I'll see you at home for a wrap-up. Thanks for coming along on our Murphy's Law road trip. You all know Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will. At least that's the common version. Captain Murphy's original quote was a bit more complex. If you watched enough of this video, you'll see why I named it after this law. The trip itself didn't have many problems, other than all the road work and the places we wanted to visit being closed and the dreary weather on the third day. But the video was a classic example of Captain Murphy's observation. When we got home, I spent a couple of hours playing with that camera and figured out one problem. But there are others that I am not satisfied I figured out. The first glitch, where it just shut off and corrupted the file, still stumps me. I'm sure it has to do with overheating, but there's no possible explanation of what caused it. After that, the main issue was the camera simply not recording. I've since found out that in certain situations, you need to press the record button twice to get it to go. And of course, I had no way of knowing that, since those situations have never occurred before, and the so-called user's manual made no mention of them. Although technically the problems were user error, I refuse to take full responsibility. I do believe, however, that this project was just too much for a no-name $50 camcorder to deal with reliably. Now, that is my fault. But I don't do things like this often enough to justify a greater investment. In any event, thanks for watching. Do the cat stuff. Maybe we'll meet again sometime.